Bring a doctor's note, but yesterday my wife was sick, so I was dealing with all the kids and
she better? There's a lot of stuff going around now. There are flus going around.
Yep. The temperature is 40.
I wrote back to my chavra.
Rabbi,
they're not particularly sympathetic.
How cold it is here?
Yeah.
Everything's relative.
They had like over there like a chill factor 19 below.
What do you have to wear a fur coat over there?
Most people wear down coats.
Yeah.
I have a long down coat. I wear when I'm out there in winter, I wear this hat with flaps over the thing and a ski mask, and then this down coat. If I would walk that way in Borough Park, they'd shoot me. Over there, it's all propriety. You got to dress a certain way. But the other one would not.
Finally, we're touching on the subject.
Huh?
Tell about your boots.
Huh?
The boots you have. Those velvet boots that you don't take your shoes on.
Those are boots.
Boots are good.
Huh?
Boots are good.
Yeah, these are boots that, like, you want to climb Mount Everest, that's what you wear. Somebody else said it was so cold there that when people spoke, they had to actually take the words and fry them.
That's cool.
I was thinking yesterday about this. Rashi's comment on that because the midwives were God-fearing, so Yaslam Batim. So he made for them Batim, and Rashi says, Bate Kahuna, Levia, Umalchus. Shekuin Batim. These are called houses. Kahuna, Levia, Yecheved. Yecheved is the matriarch of the tribes that are Kohan Levium, and Malchus mi Miriam, which means also that it came from Yocheved, but somehow more specifically from Miriam. Miriam was the daughter of, so it means that really that Yocheved is responsible for all of them, but apparently Malchus was a contribution specifically of Miriam. It occurs to me just as a digression that my father-in-law once said that it says over here as follows: that the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, where the name of one of them was Shifra and the name of the second was Pua, and he said, when you midwife the Hebrew women, so then, if it's a boy child, you should kill him, and if it's a girl child, then you can allow it to live. So my father-in-law, Chaim Lucha, asked, that it repeats this thing, Vayema twice. The first pasuk is, Vayem Melech Mitzrayim Na'yal the Melech Mitzrayim said to the Hebrew midwives, the name of which one was Shiva, the name of the second was Puah, and it doesn't say what he said. It just tells you who he was talking to, and then but it repeats then Vayemer again. Vayemer Yaletchen. So he said that Paro was a pretty shrewd fellow, and he understood that in order to be able to get Jewish women to do something that was against their nature, that there had to be some small, as it were, some small crack, which is the beginning of the slippage. So he said to them as follows. And the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, what did he say to them? He said to them, I want you to change your name. Yocheved, from now on you're going to be called Shifra, and you, Mary, you're going to be called Puah. We're going to change your names to things that sound more Egyptian. That's the beginning. You start the erosion by, you change their names from to some extent, today, if you had a grandmother whose name was Sprinza, you don't name your daughter Sprinza. But so that's kind of we disconnect from previous generations. And he understood that if you want to get, you want to get somebody to start doing something really nasty, you can't do it when they're still connected. You got to create some kind of separation. So first thing he said to him, Shifra, you'll be called Shifra, you'll be called Puah, and then he said to him, now I can talk to you. But in any event, Rashi there says that Shifra and Puah represent not their names, because their real names were Yocheved and Miriam, but it represents how they, what their professional, how they discharge their professional midwife duties. So Yocheved became Shifra because Shifra comes from the word l'shaper, to make beautiful, and that Shifra zu Yocheved al shem shemishaperes esavlad. So when the child is born, so she cleaned up the baby, made the baby, washed him off, probably put some oil on the baby. Puah zu Miriam, Hashem shepoya umedaberes, because she would, I don't know what the word is, she would, coo, maybe. And she would talk, v'hoiga levlad, and she would kind of talk to the child, as women do, hamafaises tinei kaboicha, like women do when they try to, to quiet a crying child. So it occurred to me that the reward that the midwives were given by Hashem were consistent with what they were doing. So Kehanim and Leviim, one of their outstanding functions was to make Jews feel beautiful. People come to them with either they come with gratitude in their hearts, or they come with remorse and sadness. Either they're bringing a korban ola, or they're bringing a korban chatos, or they're bringing a korban osham, or a korban toda, whatever it is there. The function of the kohanim is to be that particular person who's going to help the person express themselves so that they can. It's kind of a building thing. It's a positive function. So because she was Mishaperes Savlad, so that's why the reward is, okay, so you're going to be the matriarch of the lines of people, of the Kohanim, the Levium, whose their function is that they're Mishaper Klal Yisrael. Malchus is more of a thing to maintain order. The king is the function of a king is to create an orderly society, to address the needs of the people. It's not so much of a shipur as it is to make sure that people don't get out of line, that that the borders are protected, that it's a containment sort of thing. So Miriam, who she was being Matthias, the children, they were crying. It was a function of kind of restoring order, restoring peace, that kind. It wasn't. This wasn't a function of making beautiful. It was a function of controlling something that wasn't beautiful. So that's more of a function of Malchus. So she's rewarded with Malchus.
So how is cooing related to that?
Well, because the child is crying. The child is crying, so you're trying to...
Containing the chaos.
Right.
Did it also come, the kahuna in that came from Mila Shem Elah, and by stabbing, did the kahuna not come from what the men did? Not from...
It's a good question. Because he's saying that at that point in history, the Chedei hadn't happened yet, so Reuven was supposed to be the shade to bring the kuna, and not Levi. So we're saying right now that the kahuna came because of what Yocheved did. But we know that the trigger for kahuna was Mila Shem Eli, so that didn't happen yet. That trigger.
It was taken,
But it was a bracha.
it was taken away from Reuven, but who was it given to? And by the way, in all of these cases, these things are kind of multiply determined. So there usually are many variables that are responsible for it. So sometimes you see something in the Meforshim, and it turns out that it's just one of many things.
Back to kahuna Pinchas from his act that he did. Kahuna. But you're saying it came from both sides.
If Melucha is Yocheved,
No, Melucha is
and not
Miriam.
Miriam, then
No,
it would...
Melucha is Miriam. Yocheved is Kahuna.
Miriam married to Yehuda, to Yehuda.
So Moshe was L'chara Melech, but that's not from Miriam. So which Melucha is from the Levium?
Which Melucha is from Miriam?
It's from Miriam.
I give up. I didn't follow this. I trusted that. I trusted Rashi. Then you have to. What?
Melucha is married into Shevet Yehuda.
Miriam married Chur,
Miriam
right?
married.
Miriam married Chur.
No. Chur was a son of Miriam. Right. Chur was a son. She married Kalev.
Yeah.
She married Kalev. And then, and she was married to somebody else. KSY, who was that? In any event, so then,
But the KSY was Khaled's brother. What's his name? Yasniel ben
Osniel ben Kenaz.
Knaz.
Right, Osniel ben Kenaz. And he was,
He was a half-brother of Khaled.
a half
We learned about
brother.
this in
Right, a half brother.
Yeshua, because there's a focus on
Right, so he was a half brother. That meant that they were
I can't remember why they were
something. There's a Rashi there. It says why they called him that. I don't know what it was. I'll find
But
it.
Yasniel ben Knaz basically restored like 300 things forgotten in Kiryat Sefer. Something about the Sefer Yeshua. I put in the. I just don't remember that much of that. Well, Behar will know exactly.
You don't remember the 300?
Anyway, so
What are you doing with it?
even though there's some correspondence between what they did and what the generations that succeeded them became. It seemed to me that there was another issue that was relevant here, and that's the Shem Shmuel. I don't remember where he says it, but he makes the following statement. Ordinarily, when, let's say in a physical situation, if a person is in a safe place, and then he wanders into a place which is dangerous, and he finds himself at risk, so he'll return to that safe haven. So, fleeing from threat or fleeing from evil ordinarily just brings you back to kind of like your previous state. So Shem Yishmael brings, I think he cites his father, the Avnei Neza, that in spiritual terms, when you run from something or you reject something evil, that to the extent of your fleeing, that's how much you go into the positive. So it's not going back to the square one. It's really, if you've wandered into someplace which is, let's say, a -3 in terms of being in a dangerous place, and you make a choice that you're going to flee from there, then you end up in a +3. You don't end up at 0.
That's why Yanos Yosef.
What?
Why Yanos?
That's why Yosef, right. So, I was trying to figure out why that's the case. Somebody runs away from some kind of Yetzer Hara. Why would that necessarily, in that proportion, bring him into Kedusha to the extent that he's rejecting evil? So I believe that it has something to do with, not with the fact that he's fleeing, but why he's fleeing. The only way, in other words, if somebody says, I don't like this, and the reason he doesn't like it, one of the interesting things that the Rambam says about Chasidei Umois Ha'olam. He says this in, I don't know, like someplace in Hilchos Malachim. He says that if you have a non-Jew who keeps all the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach, but he does them because it appeals to his logic, because he's a humanitarian, he does not qualify for Chassidei Yisrael. Chassidei Yisrael is someone who keeps the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach because Hashem says so. That's the difference. And to some extent, the logic in that is because when someone is doing something because it appeals to his logic, then essentially it has nothing to do with anything that's necessarily spiritual. It has to do with, there were amongst the rationalist philosophers, they were people who had an ethical commitment. Kant and Hume had, the categorical imperative. You essentially don't do unto others as you wouldn't want them to do unto you. That was basically the categorical imperative. I think that was Hume, if I'm not mistaken. So it's possible for people, or there was this philosopher Locke, and he said that most ethical conduct is a result of an implicit social contract, that people understood that in order to have a safe environment, that people had to trade certain liberties for certain protections. So if someone was very strong, so he might be able to take advantage of a lot of people who were weaker than him. But because he did not want to be vulnerable to people who were stronger than him, so he entered this implicit, unspoken contract, which is, I will give up my right to exploit those who are weaker than me in return for the protection that nobody will take advantage of me. So that's kind of, across the board, that's what supports, this kind of, huh?
That's one shita in Dina Machzudina in Moshanim, it says Mishum Kima Olam.
That?
It's Mishum Kima Olam.
Right.
So that's what the Rebbe is saying. So that's why the -3 is directly related to the +3.
So I believe that the difference is that Chassidei Yisrael, when they do it for a reason, which is God connected, then that behavior has a positive charge to it. If someone flees evil because it's offensive to him, so when he flees it, the -3 goes back to 0. But if the reason that he's fleeing is because Hashem says so, he needs a +3. He needs the +3 energy in order to get away from the -3. So he's really drawing on the energy of the kedusha in order to be able to reject the negative. So that's why he ends up in the positive territory, because the only way for him to really reject them is to take hold of something which is in the positive territory. So he's holding on to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm doing this. Why am I running away from Eshes Fatira? Because
The quintessential example is Lech Lecha.
what?
The quintessential example is Lech Lecha.
Right.
Chazal said that Yosef saw his father's image. So is that means he's reminded of the HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Is that what they're tending to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think his father's image would be, he was reminded of a certain sense of the intensity of his father, the authenticity of his father's faith. So, when Yocheved and Miriam were doing the things that they did, it wasn't just kind of in defiance Paro because they didn't like Paro. It was because Vayiki Avraham Yaldes Esolikim. The Pasuk is telling you they did what they did out of the fact that they were Yirei Elikim. It was a positive. This was a positive statement. It wasn't just a rejection of evil. It was a rejection of evil that drew on the positives. That's why they merited to have those brachas of Batei Kahuna, Levia, and Malchus.
So does this Metzias exist any time we're doing Miratzon Hashem? Doesn't have to necessarily be that we're coming from a negative place, or there's a negative environment, or we've got Bechira. We can either do Ratzon Matayvas or Ratzon Hashem.
So what comes out is you can have two people doing the same action, where one is going back to zero, and one's going to a completely different quality.
It's like the kiyum of the mitzvahs losa. So if someone's running away is not doing something, it's different than someone who is not doing something because he didn't do it. It didn't have the nisayon, so it's not the same schar as someone who was put in a certain situation.
But you also have when you do unintentional, you can flip the whole thing and become totally positive, right? If you're doing b'shoigei or b'mezi, right? They say if you do tshuva on
But the example we're talking about now is about a losa, so that for someone to negate something. Right now, I don't think anyone in the room are makayim mitzvah of not stealing. I don't think the opportunity is coming to it at this particular moment. We're listening to a shiur that we're not stealing something right now. But if someone is in a situation where it'd be so easy for them to take something they didn't, so.
I've got a fishing scam in progress. It works on its own.
So what?
Today with computers, you can steal while you're comfortably at home with your pina colada.
Or listen to a shiur.
Listen to a shiur.
And you don't need to
Sorry,
be
getting
in
that.
Nigeria.
I thought nobody was stealing right now.
If a person, a yid, who is not necessarily thinking about Hashem said not to do this. So what the Rambam says about Chassidus Olam, so could there be a chilek between a yid and a goy? And that there's a presumption, it's machshava tova mitzarevs the ma'asos, that there's a more of a presumption of positive intent there,
Right.
and that it's coming from
Yeah, he doesn't make that distinction by a yid. He doesn't make that distinction by a yid. He only does it by Chassidei Yisrael. So, I guess we have to assume that there's a difference.
You begin a mitzvahs, tzrichas, kavanas, mitzvahs, and they're both mitzvahs, but there's a different quality when it's.
So in other words, if a Stam Yid is not necessarily in Danish Nishba, if he runs away from Eshes Potiphar, does he have that same extra impetus as Yosef?
I don't know.
I don't remember. I heard that this deck was stacked in favor of
What?
I heard the deck was stacked in our favor of a Jew, that they get a certain, more so than the Omer Omer, that they have.
We get more credit.
That we
B'li kavana, we're still makayim.
even believe that there's something that, like we're the house, the house always wins, to use a casino terminology. Whatever we even do a little bit, we get like a.
I don't know if I told you this story. You can stop me if I did. When it was just this thing that I had with in Ottawa when I was speaking to this. We were scholars and residents in Ottawa. It goes back, I don't know, 35 years ago. The particular inspiration that I had when I was in Ottawa took the following form. I said to them, I began my remarks by saying that I thought I deserved to be given a Nobel Prize for a discovery of what it was that was responsible for world wars and family strife and dysfunctional marriages and stuff. And I said, it all has to do with the little tag.
The mattresses.
Huh?
And the mattresses.
No, the little tag in the back of the undershirt. So I said, it's so innocuous. You put on your undershirt and it has this little tag. And the truth of the matter is that it's not absolutely beyond having some kind of it, it touches your skin a little bit. It's a very tiny irritant, but it's an irritant. So what happens is that over time, you put it on your undershirt in the morning, and it's a little irritant. But as the day goes on, this thing kind of wears at you, so it picks up velocity. And then at some point in the day, somebody says something which is really kind of harmless, but it could be interpreted, but you're already annoyed. So when this person says this kind of innocent statement, you blow up. And if you happen to be the head of the government, so you'll send an army after them, so you'll just start a war with somebody that you don't like. So I suggested that behind all of the strife that goes on, it's really this little tag in the back of them. And the reason that I said that was, I said to them, look guys, Jews are born with a little tag. It's called the neshama. It's very quiet, it's very tiny, it's almost as though you don't feel it, but you feel it. And what happens with B'nai Yisrael is because they feel this annoyance, they try to do something to satisfy it. So we become these major contributors to every redemptive force in the universe. So we're doctors and we're advocates and we're researchers and we're philosophers and we're entertainers. All the early years of Hollywood, they were all Jews. I remember in 1948, the television programs. When the television sets were as big as this room, and they had a tiny little 10-inch screen, but all of the programs were Jewish entertainers, Milton Berle and Maury Amsterdam and Sid Caesar, and I'm a big bucky. I mean, you can tell I'm a big bucky, but they were all Jewish, and Metro Goldwyn Mayer is Jews, and it's all the whole industry was Jewish. The point I'm really making is that, and of course, if you look at the Nobel Prizes that are given, we're disproportionately, we're way out of proportion to our population, the kind of thing, because Karl Marx was Jewish, Freud was Jewish, Einstein was Jewish. I mean, there's that little thing that says, do something noble, do something worthwhile, make a difference. There's something inside of us. So instead of doing what that little tag says, which is neshama, divine mitzvahs, connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, fill the world with light. So we end up because of that annoyance, doing things that we hope it's going to make that little tag, stop annoying us, and it really doesn't. So it ends up that a lot of people are making huge contributions, but they're not fulfilled. You got to take care of that little tag.
Well, the guys who get the shirt, the first thing they do is rip out the tag.
Right. So, and some people probably try to do that with their neshama, except it doesn't work. But that's the nature of the Jew is a redemptive. There's a redemptive force inside of us. 3 weeks later, after I came back from Ottawa, I got a package in the mail with 3 undershirts, no tag. And also no return address. I didn't know who to thank. I wasn't sure if they got the message. I don't know what.
How does someone know if they're tending to their tag as opposed to trying to placate it? I mean, if people can even do things that are maybe, like you said, they're world changing and they're helpful, but they're still ignoring the tag.
And I think that, to come back to what we were talking about, I think the tag is, in a certain sense, the main thrust of the tag is connect with Hashem. So if what we're doing has a God consciousness about it, and we're doing, and whatever we're doing, whether it's a mitzvah or it's something very pedestrian, if we maintain somehow an awareness of the fact that we're doing this because it's part of the way in which we want to sustain this relationship that we have with Kadosh Baruch Hu, I think that's the criterion. That's the litmus test.
What if, for instance, a Reform Jew is doing something lishma for, Reform Judaism, and sees that as part of like Judaism's, mission to whatever, help poor people and whatever. I was wondering,
Yeah.
how do we view that person? Is that person?
So I think that's part of the tag. And I think we get credit for those things because even though there is no kind of deliberate or upfront consciousness that we're doing this because Hashem says so, but we are responding to the fact that we have a neshama, and that neshama is really an expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I think we get credit for it because the reason that we're motivated to do these things is because there is this holy force inside of us. But that's not, it's less than ideal because we're missing the thing that really could make, a big difference.
What if he supports BDS, the shame helping the Palestinians? Is he going to get credit for that too?
The Baal Shem HaKadosh once asked his Hasidim, he said to them, why is it that people will pay 7 times as much for a horse that runs 7 times faster than another horse? So he said to him, why is it that people will pay 7 times as much for a horse that runs 7 times faster than another horse? So they said to him, because gets people to their destination 7 times sooner. So he said to them, but if it gets lost 7 distances further. So they were silent, and he said to them, because it will find its way back 7 times as fast. So, the Jews who end up in BDS are the horses that are, they're blunging. That's the Yiddish word, blunget. He's lost 7 times further than, and you know what? It's a little bit like a violin. If you know how to play the violin, it's the most beautiful instrument in the world. If you don't, it's the most offensive thing in the world. It'll drive you crazy. Somebody scratching on the violin. It's like, rubbing taking your fingernails on a chalkboard. Terrible. And Jews are a violin. How that little nursery rhyme goes, when she was good, she was very, very good, and when she was bad, she was horrid, right?
She was what?
Horrid.
What is that about?
There was a little girl who had a little curl
Right in the middle of her forehead.
right in the middle of her forehead. When she was good, she was very, very good, and when she was bad, she was horrid.
My Bubba used to say this.
Huh?
My Bubba used to say this.
Yeah.
I hope it was good.
She used to say to you.
They used to say to me when I was there.
I mean, that wouldn't be that would be very acceptable, but man is there.
So they're lost, but the motivation is coming from this tag in the Yiddish of the Shama.
Right.
So they were upset before that there is a certain
Right.
schar for that. So
Right.
even for these people, there could be some schar for this.
Does the Rebbeinu Shalom separate out the fact that the reason that they're doing it is because they think that it's going to help mankind?
They're perverting something which is
They're
garbage.
perverting something, yeah.
And
It's hard to believe that they get credit for that. I don't think so. It's almost like, taking a divine allowance and spending it on things that are against the, that foment rebellion against the king.
Shaul didn't get a reward for sparing Avram, he got a bunch. Just misspent mercy.
Is it not possible that some of these people engaged in the BDS movement are not at all fueled by anything that's Dahiban, but they're actually consumed by hate, self-loathing?
Self-loathing. I don't know what drives these people.
well, the Schusim, even in Mitzrayim, was that Doshina, so they maintain an identification with the Am. BDS seems to be a begida against that identification.
A rejection of identity
So,
altogether. Yeah.
There's something, there's the minimum that the Yidden were able to achieve. That was the schus. That's if you can't achieve that, so what's left?
That's how we started the Shiur today, was changing of names. If you were talking about it. So that was what Par was trying to do to sever our connection.
So how did Yosef accept an Egyptian name?
Is he given a choice?
And it didn't change him.
Paro,
It didn't change him.
So how did it affect him?
Why didn't it affect them?
It's only mentioned once.
It's an interesting question.
He said that other thing, that other poem, Mother, sticks and stones break my bones, but names will never hurt me. So he just repeated that for himself over.
Yeah.
You say that, Vayovid Yankov Sholem. And when Yankee was returning from Laban, so he came Sholem. So they say that Sholem is an acronym of Shem, Lashon, and Malbush.
Shame,
He
what's the
also called his treaty Gal Eid when he called his, whatever he gave it his own name.
Yeah.
He stuck with his name.
You guys do so. The Jews who are a little bit more who've been affected by the problems. You know, today anything that you want to do that's good, you come up against money. You want to make a yeshiva, it's money. You want to build a mikveh, it's money. Any program, it's money. So he says that Lavan wanted to skirt the issue. He didn't, wanted to be appropriate, politically correct. So he's called it Yigar Sahadusa. Yankee said, "Don't give me that business. This is geld."
Gilad.
Gilad. It's all geld. He said. I'm giving you guys Sahadusa business.
Yeah.
So they call it the tag. The Jig's birthright in Hebrew is taglit.
Oh yeah?
Taglit. Taglit.
Tagli is what?
But the birth,
Meaning discover. The Hebrew word, the Hebrew for birthright is taglit. I was thinking we're talking about the tag. That is the neshama. So maybe that's their job. Is the
what do you say, really?
Looks like you packed all your suitcases right up to your eyes.
The tag on the shirt, I guess.
Tag on the shirt?
This has nothing to do with S and tag.